Hello, welcome to another QA-Automan tutorial, and we're going to continue writing our page object from before, and we're going to kind of touch upon a few new topics here, one of which being dropdowns and how to select something from a dropdown. So before we were using a website called Tools and Taverns, and we kind of grabbed the name and we did a assert where we checked, is the name generator the same? Or the text name generator, does that match actually what's on the site? Now, we created a few other objects here where we're pulling the drop down and pulling the second drop down and then generate and so on and so forth. So what we want to do here is figure out, okay, let's figure out how we can select something from this drop down. So, and we're going to do this using Kotlin, kind of continuation of what we were doing before. Now, what we want to do in your page object is, instead of just grabbing the object like we did before and just saying, give me the text or something along those lines. This one, we actually want to create something like a function here that will allow us to select something from a dropdown. Now we're going to use this gender dropdown and here, which is this guy, which has the three selections here. So let's create select gender, and in this one, what we want to do is we're gonna kind of go and we're gonna start inspecting what we have here for the select. And we have options. We have under the select, we have a value. And how this works is you're going to choose the different values that are available via a new object called select. So the first thing we want to do is val and say drop down equals, and we're going to be using the select object, which takes in a few different things. How do we, there we go. Sorry, it takes one thing. It was a web element. So that's what we need. So we already know how to get a web element. So we could do two things. We can just write in here driver.findBy and put in our gender dropdown. You can do it that way. Or if you want to, you can save here, gender drop L element or L and equals, and we can just cut this and we can just paste it here. Either or, it's all up to you. Sometimes you run into some stale element exceptions when you store a find element, and we can dive into that a little bit later, but just for the sake of clarity in the code, we're going to just do find element and store it into a drop-down element and pass it into our select. So now we have our drop-down. So what do we want to do? We want to select something from it. So we can do it in a few ways. You can say just take the first one. You can select by index, value, visible text. And so each of these, how this would work is, if it's index, male would be 0, female would be 1, and random gender would be 2, because index base 0. The other option is you can select straight from the value, so just give me the value that equals female. And then third, if this text was different than the value here, you can just take it from the text. Now, I would recommend probably value or something along those lines. I think that would probably be a better or an easier way, because if you just say, if you want to pull from index, sometimes, maybe if you're going to do like select something random and then kind of just see what kind of results come from that, you could probably do index. But for me, I'm just going to say, let's, select by value, which will pass in a string. Now, we can hard code something here, but if we want to select a gender, you usually want to pass in the thing we want to look for. So we want to look for the value, which would be a string. And this will give us the ability to pass in different values and allowing us to test test our whatever it is, maybe a male, female, or random gender. So let's see. So we have our select gender. So this I mean, it's really straightforward. All right, we're creating our select object, and we're going to be able to select something from that value. So let's do a test here. So let's continue from generate name displays text. In this one, we're going to run our name generator page dot select gender, and we're going to pass in female. Let's just do something like this. This one is complaining we need to again make sure it's not null, because we are associating, or we are messing with it. And if you want to keep adding these exclamation points every single time, I believe, and we're going to try something here. There we go. And I can remove these. Nope. Nope. I guess you cannot. Okay. We're going to dive into how to clean up that code a little bit later in another refactored video. But for now, we'll keep it here. And this is just, again, making sure that this isn't null before we proceed forward with the action that we need to take. So we're going to select female. And how are we going to know that it is in fact female? We need a way to make sure that it happened. Now, we'll dive in that in a second, but we're going to do this. We're going to thread.sleep. We'll just do it for 4 seconds. And then we'll change it just to make sure we know that it actually worked. We'll change it back to male and then wait another 4 seconds. Again, these thread.sleeps are just for debugging. And let's kick off this run. So I right click, generate name displays text, test, and now we're running it, which we pop up our browser, which should take us to the Tools and Taverns page. And that happened really fast. So notice how it changed male to female. It was female and then turned to male. Maybe adding like a wait before, and we probably could have see the change. We'll just for the sake of sanity, let's just run it one more time and see that it's the starting value. It changes to female and then changes back to male, just so we can really see that. So it's male. So we saw male, change to female, great. And then in 4 seconds, 3, 2, 1, male, great. And then close, and then tear down. So we were able to really, able to select a male, female, and all that. Now, so we got that working. So, maybe our test will be running, for right now, we'll be selecting just a female. Our next step is we're gonna do the same thing, but similarly, we're gonna do it with the race dropdown. So now, what you're gonna notice is if I'm gonna write this and I'm gonna say, select race, which we're gonna pass in our value, and this one is gonna look pretty similar. We're gonna say, race drop element equals driver.find element, pass in our by, which in this case is our race drop down. What are we gonna do? We're gonna add it to a drop down. We're going to add it to a select object, which we need to pass in our race drop down element, and then drop down dot select value, and then pass in the value. Now, if you look at these two, they're extremely similar, right? So when you start seeing very similar text like this is the opportunity for you to you can create a kind of a common or generic function that will allow you to reuse over and over again. So let's put this at the top and keep it private. This is select by value, and we're going to copy this code here. Keep it something generic. So this is the element. We're going to pick the element here. This will require a value string, and then this will require also a web element. Web element. Oh, you need to add the fun. Always need to have fun. It's important. So this. oops, not the web element. We want the by. Oops, the by. There we go. There we go. So what does this do for us? Now, you could have a select gender here, and then you can replace this where it passes the value and the gender dropdown, and you can delete all this. Same goes to these 3 items, or paste that down here, except for instead of gender dropdown, we want to do race dropdown. Now, what did we just do here? We pretty much essentially cut down a lot of code and created these one-offs. Now, you can keep these functions here, so when it comes time to write tests, you can type in name generator and you can say, oh, I'd like to select race and gender, and you just pass in a single value. And that's really kind of nice for people that can traverse your code. So and that's nice. The other alternative would be you can remove this and have this public, and instead you can say select by value. You put in your value, so male, and then you can pass in the actual which drop down are we referring to, and you can say you can pass in well from the race drop down I would like to select male. So those are just like 2 flavors of how you like to write your code. If you want to have a limited number of these and just have a generic value here, by all means, you can totally do that. If you like to have these functions here, again, you can do that as well. It's all up to you how you want to write that. But these are just a few solutions, and you kind of pick what feels right to you. I would say there's no right or wrong way. I mean, you have to type more characters here, but again, it's easier for other people to kind of traverse your code and know exactly what this page does based on these elements. I'm gonna keep it this way, just so that, hey, what does this thing do? Oh, I can select a gender and a race and just pass in some fun values. So let's keep that as is. In this case, we want to select a race. Now here, we're gonna look at what values are available to us, and we have a bunch of dwarf, elf, gnome, let's go back here and let's say elf, just for the sake of ease of character typing. We'll say elf. So this will select a female, select elf, and lastly, we want to hit this button, generate. Now again, you can create a function that says, submit form, or you can just have a driver dot find element, and we can pass in our element name generator page. We want our generate button, and then you could just say click. Just click it. We don't need to define. We do not need to define a one-line function here like we did here. Again, it's flavor, up to you. If you just want to have a name generator dot click generate, you can do that. And I'll just show you what that looks like. Click generate. Now again, you're only creating a single line here. You're creating a single line function, and usually it's maybe not always the best to do that, but again, you have the ability to represent what your page does. So again, your page has these functions that can just do stuff, and again, up to you. I'll continue to do this way, just for the ease of keeping a standardization. So we select a gender, we select a race, and then we click generate. And so what do we want to do? We want to make sure that this produces a bunch of values. Now these values are pure random, so it's going to be really tough to really know what these things do. So if I click generate, it's creating all kinds of different things, and nothing's really the same. There are some similarities of the text, but again, the way these are generated, it looks like it's using a Markov chain, so it's gonna be really hard to make sure that this has like, is this going to say dunder and horgag or whatever. So what we want to do, at least make sure that when we do this, we generate values here, and then if we click it again, it would generate a whole different set of values, and that's going to be kind of our test here, that it actually has the 10, and then it displays another 10 after the fact. So let's do that. We have, I believe we have our object here, which is our name text field names, which we created to be private because, you know, if we're going to pull this and it has a list of elements, we want to be able to do that without having to run into the issue if I said, you know, driver.find element, and then I happen to pass in this name text field values. We want to produce a list. This would only produce a single element. So to kind of enforce that thinking, I created this private and say get generated names, and that will return a list. And so now that forces the idea that you need to find elements plural instead of singular. So it's a good way to kind of let other coders know, or when they're looking at your code, to really see what you're really trying to convey and what things they should abide by. So we want to get the names, get generated names. And again, we want to make sure that there are 10, right? So we're going to store these. We're going to store these in a list, first list of names. So we'll store this in a list. And again, if you don't want to infer what this type is, you can always add, you know, list web elements. What is this thing? You can always do this. If you really like the clean look, you can do this. Again, it's up to you how you want to clean your code, and that's the beauty of Kotlin. You can kind of do these little things here and there, but at the end of the day, you know, you can keep it it's really strict. Really, and strict in the sense of like types and things of that nature. So you don't have to always add all these extra characters, and you keep it really clean. So I'm going to keep it clean. We're going to move on with that. Our first is the names. Now, the first thing we want to assert is that there are 10. There always has to be 10. So our first test here is that there are 10. So assert equals that our first list of names, equals 10. And maybe we have maybe somewhere at the top is expected num of names equals 10, and this gives us a value, because if that ever changes, again, if maybe they're going to start producing 15, there you go, all your test data is changed immediately for that test. So it's really nice to kind of put your values up top of the test so people know what's going on. So assert that there are 10 correct number. There were an incorrect number of names generated. So incorrect number of names generated. So we're asserting that our first set of generated names equals 10. Then what we're going to do is we're going to re-click the generate, and we're going to click that button a second time. And then we're going to, again, we're going to copy this, and we're going to get the names a second time, but we'll call this the second list of names. And then we're going to assert. Okay, so I had to think about this. So what we're doing is the first list of names dot any. So if you take every single one of these, if any of this is true, right, then we're gonna return true. If any of this is true, that the name is contained within the second list. So this is some little Kotlin magic. If you notice some Java 8, it's kind of similar, like any match, I believe. But essentially what we're saying is take the list of everything in here, right? Take each item, so name, take each name, and check to see if it is contained within the second set of lists. And if any of them do match that, and this is true, then make this whole thing return true. And actually, that would be a negative thing for us. So we want to make sure that this is false. We don't want any of them to be the same. And if that case is ever true, that means that there is something wrong. So we want to make sure they're always different. There was a matching name. And what we want to do is, because we're using an assert false, if this does return true or false, that's all it will provide to us. And that's not really helpful. How do we know what the name was? Maybe there's some data there. So let's actually get those printed out. So we can say first list equals, and then we can just put our list here. And then we can divide this list. We can create a tab. Or actually, you know what? We can do a line break. We'll do a line break just for making it cleaner. And then we say second list equals, and then we'll paste in our second list. And something to note for the new Kotlin users, one of the cool things you can do inside Kotlin is you can actually just use this syntax, this $. Here we can zoom in here. This $, bracket, and you can paste in your variables, and they will actually be evaluated within the string. And actually, if it's a single value, you don't even need these brackets. So it makes it a little bit cleaner. I mean, it looks more complicated. The other alternative in Java is to do the string.format, but you don't need to do that anymore. And this actually makes it really nice to just input variables into your strings. So now this will check to see if there is any duplicates. So what we want to do is, and we're going to slow things down as well. Actually, you know what? Let's just run it as fast as we can. I think that would be a good thing. Oh, we also want to make sure that there are 10. Again, we expected number of names and our second list. So incorrect number of names on second generation. Generation. There we go. Of names on first generation. This is easy. Oh, I did the same thing. This is easy for us to know, like, is it the first or second? Where did it fail? So here we go. We're gonna run this. All right, it's gonna load up. Wow, that went so fast. What happened here? What's happening? It expected 10, but actually it was a list of web elements. So that's not helpful. What we wanted here is a list of names, but we wanted the size. The size of how many names were generated. And that was a blunder on my part. So let's add the, check the size first before we move on. So let's try it one more time. We're going to rerun it. So load it up. Okay, so it's running really fast. So there was a matching name. All right, so second problem. So the problem is, of these names generated, they're returning web elements. Yes, this is a list of web elements. We actually want the text, not just the web elements. So one of the cool things we can do here is, if we say get generated names, instead of returning the web elements, we can actually just do strings and turn these web elements into the text itself. And how can we do that? This is actually returning a list, so we can run is what is called a map function. And what this does is it can take every single element inside of your list and kind of manipulate or transform that object into something else. And in our case, we want to take our element and we want to turn this element into text. So it's going to take every single element, web element here, and convert it into the text that is represented of that web element, and we're going to store this into a list of those strings. So now what's going to happen is when we call get generated names, if we hover over this, if you notice in the top right there, it says list string. So that's going to give us the actual string names. So let's run this a second time, and hopefully we'll have better results. We're going to go into a little bit of a debugging situation here. Okay, that happened really fast, but we gotta check. We got that this thing actually passed. What did this thing do? The test, we should go through it one more time. We want to go to website, verify the title. Then we want to select some values in our dropdowns, and then we want to save the first list of names, check the number of names, and then we want to secondly save the second list of names, check the number of names, and then lastly we want to verify that the list of names from the first and second generation do not have any matching names. So this will give us a way to kind of see, like, what is that test doing? Let's remove some of the white space. And so people can read what's going on. The text should be somewhat readable on its own. Use driver.get, okay, saving the text title, so on and so forth. But really, this is a good way to kind of see what's kind of going on in your tests if somebody actually wanted to take a trip down and read it in human readable language instead of all the little different functions. So what did we do just now, right? We were selecting things from our dropdowns. We're able to, generate a list of elements and do things with them using the map function. We learned a little bit about how we can, create these different types of page object functions that allow other coders or other people to know, what does this name generator page do? Well, you can select genders and race, click generate, you can get the generated names, and then we just created like a few simple tests here using assert equals and assert false. So I think I'll wrap this up here, and then in the next video I'm going to kind of show you a whole other version of page object using what is called the at find by. So stay tuned for one of those videos coming up. I think it'll be really helpful. Also, I'll have a few other refactor videos, maybe show you some cool tips and cool things you can do using Kotlin and things like this any function. And please, if you really enjoy these and you get to the end of this video, please subscribe. Seeing people come in and really want to watch these videos and learn something, it really gives me the signal to know that you're coming back and you really have the desire to learn more. And I really recommend hitting that notification bell. That will definitely give you, every time I upload a new video, what the next thing's going to be. And again, I'm going to try to really go in depth and really hit all the points of Kotlin and Selenium. So until then, guys, keep on automating, and I'll see you guys online.